had to pause right there. Today, we are moving from mindset to vision. And I have a piece of data from the MVP manager assessment that, is going to illustrate a massive blind spot that I saw coming out in when someone did the manager assessment, the MVP manager assessment. And so this is not about just being a charismatic leader, but it's about understanding the blind spots and how to work on improving those blind spots. So we're going to be looking at Manager Stone's data one more time. And so over the 4 week period, over the 4 week session, we are going to be looking at those data and to see where you may fall into this space as well. And so if you haven't checked out last week's session, go ahead and check it out. After you finish watching this one today, check out last week's session to get more details on the data for Manager Stone. But let's look at Manager Stone again. When he was asked if he inspired his team with a compelling vision for the future, his score was a whopping 9 out of 10. Because he's great at giving those grand speeches. He's great at the big picture moments. But there is this gap in his vision. There's this gap in his leadership that I call the vision void. And so when I went through the data, and he was asked if he regularly communicates the why behind, the daily decisions and the priorities. He actually scored a measly 3 out of 10 for that space. And so, yes, Manager Stone knows where he's going. He knows the big picture. He understands what needs to happen. But here's the thing. His team has no idea, why they're, literally pulling these ropes, because they're like on a ship, but you don't know why you're pulling these ropes, these specific ropes. And so today we're going to be talking about the 3-step vision effect framework for mid-level managers to align daily work with purpose. Moving from just inspiration to translation, because yes, inspiration is good, but we also want translation. We want that translation. And so welcome everyone to another episode of Finding Freedom Through Confidence. We are back again this week. And again, as I said, this is week 2 of the 4-part series. And it's the hidden gaps of high performers who became managers. Last week, we took off the armor of confidence and we talked about why, being a bulletproof leader actually can suffocate your team. So again, if you haven't watched it, go ahead and watch that replay. For those of you who are just coming into my space and you're joining for the very first time and you don't know who I am, my name is Tanique Easy. In my current capacity, I function as a leadership development expert, unlocking the efficiency of first-time and mid-level managers so they become high-impact leaders without burnout, because we know a lot of that is happening right now, and we don't want our leaders to be burnt out. So let us know in the comments. Let us know in the comments where you're watching from. If you are watching live, type hashtag live. If you're watching the replay, type hashtag replay and let us know your thoughts and takeaways, because we come back and we respond to all the comments in the chat there. And I want to say, for my returning audience members, those who constantly on a weekly basis show up and support, thank you so much. I appreciate your presence. I appreciate your support. You actually help to make this show what it is on a weekly basis. And so remember our thought for 2026. Our thought for 2026 is MVP confidence is currency. If you said that, you got it right. MVP confidence is currency. So I'm going to pause and I'm going to allow that to sink in just for a moment. As we get into the core lesson this afternoon, Dr. Miles Monroe would said, let's get into our lesson for today. So, I'm going to borrow that from him. This is something that I want us to hear, and I want us to hear this clearly because this applies to me as well. Is that charisma without clarity is just noise. Charisma without clarity is just noise. Because when you have a manager, charismatic, know where they're going, they're confident. Because again, remember, Manager Stone last week, he scored a 10 out of 10 for confidence. So confidence is not his problem. But there are gaps, even as a seasoned leader, there are gaps that he recognizes in his own leadership. And so when you have a 9 out of 10 for vision, but then you have a 3 out of 10 for communicating the why, I mean, that's an opportunity right there. That's an opportunity right there. And so what happens is that your team will execute, yes. Yet they will come in and they will do the work. They're going to be checking the boxes and they're going to be working hard. But something is going to be missing. Something is going to be lacking. And so in the MVP framework, we call this the difference between grand speech and optional clarity. And so if your team understands, or if your team doesn't really understand the purpose behind their daily task, they really aren't truly engaged. They really aren't truly engaged. So yes, they will show up, but there's not gonna be this deep sense of commitment, this deep sense of urgency to get this why, to move beyond, the to move into not just mediocrity or move beyond average. Let me put it that way, not mediocrity, but move beyond average into excellence and to greatness and to beyond that. And so, yes, it's going to show up. So you're going to see, so they may not have that total commitment to see how their work contributes to the overall organizational success. So yes, that might happen. And so as leaders, when we miss this opportunity to translate the vision into that daily why, one of the things that I find will happen is that we keep reacting. We become more reactive instead of we are, becoming more impact driven leaders, becoming more impactful leaders. And the result of that, because we are becoming so more reactive than impact driven, we as leaders actually become the bottleneck in our departments. We as managers, as first time and mid-level managers, we actually become that bottleneck in our departments. And so I'm going to pause here just for a minute and I'm going to welcome those who are just joining. I want to welcome Curtis this afternoon. Thank you so much for joining this afternoon, Curtis. Great to see you. I mean, you're here week in, week out. Thank you so much for streaming with us. And one of these weeks, I know you talk about leadership from the perspective of, the male. And one of these weeks, we're definitely going to have a joint session where we talk about leadership in that space and how you're finding it in that space, as well as you work specifically with male leaders. And so again, thank you so much for showing up this afternoon. But as I said, we as leaders become the bottleneck. We may become that bottleneck. And I'm going to be honest with you, this hits close to home. This hits home for me because as I lead in the different organization, and I'm going to be speaking specifically about Toastmasters here. as I lead in this organization where I have persons at different levels, persons who are in different spaces and different trajectory, you know, on their leadership journey. The thing is, I am a mover. Like I like to move. When as the vice president education, the brunt of the work falls on my shoulders. And so when I'm not seeing things moving, I want them to move. Yes, I want them to move. I need to get it done. And so I move. And so there are times when flyers need to be done, and the person who is in charge is late in getting it done. So what do? I jump in myself and I do it because I can't wait. I couldn't wait. And that's not the only time that I do it. I will, there will be time when we need to reach out to prospects, and I would do it myself because I couldn't wait on the membership lead to do that. And so here's the mindset. Here's the mindset, and it is a mindset. Here's the mindset that I have been saying to myself, that I've, coached myself on. It's that I'm being helpful, and you may be coaching yourself on that mindset too, that you are just being helpful. And yes, you are being helpful. I'm not negating that we are being helpful. But here's the bottom line. What I'm really doing, what you might be really doing, is that you are stepping over your team instead of stepping into the role of the leader. So you're stepping into their role. You're stepping over. Not just stepping into their, you're stepping over them. And so when we step over persons, when we find that we are stepping over our team members to do their work, then here's what is going to happen. It is a matter of not allowing them to grow. This is what will happen. We, as leaders, and I find that for me, is that I am actually making withdrawal from my leadership account. So every time I step over my membership lead or the person who is supposed to be doing the flyer, the PR person or somebody else, I am making a withdrawal from my leadership account. Why do I say that? Why am I saying that? Because yes, I'm just being helpful. Here's what. Not only am I depleting my energy, I am also robbing my team of the chance to grow in their roles. So yes, it may seem like we are being helpful, but we are actually depleting our energy, and we are robbing our team of the chance to grow. And we have that cycle. It is a cycle that happens over and over. And I label this as an overdraft thinking. I label it as overdraft thinking because, yes, we want to be the hero. We want to fix everything. I want to fix everything. We want to do that. But the thing is, as I reviewed that mindset, I wasn't enabling the heroes within my team. What I was actually doing was I was overworking myself and I was getting exhausted. And so that's what happened when we actually skip the why. We become the bottleneck, and it's more than likely that it may seem like a win because we are actually helping out initially, but it's not a win. It's actually not a win because the team doesn't grow. The team is stagnated, and we rob them of that chance. And so if we keep going in that cycle, if we keep going around in that cycle, then we are operating in overdraft. We're going to eventually reach to the point where our leadership balance sheet is in red. We're going to reach that space where, because we are depleting, we are taking away. We are making those unintentional withdrawals because we think that we are helping, but we are making those unintentional withdrawals from our leadership bank account. Welcome, Lisa. Thank you so much for joining this afternoon. Great to see you. And so this brings me back to the data where we talked about Manager Stone. And so maybe you are like Manager Stone, you have that inspiration down pat, you have that inspiration down so good that you are a 9 out of 10, you're a 10 out of 10. You like to inspire because here's the thing. I when I do my leadership assessment, I am a visionary and a motivational leader. That's where I fall. So I'm not a charismatic leader, but I'm a visionary and a motivational leader. But you can find some charisma in that because as you talk about the why, as you show the vision, right? Because you are so passionate about the vision, sometimes without you not sharing what the vision is on a daily basis, why it matters, then, persons will, again, they won't know the why. They won't know, okay, how does this translate into what I am doing on a daily basis? And so that becomes where you inspire, but it is inconsistent. It is inconsistent. And so these are two questions that I have come up with that we can ask ourselves as we pivot and as we make this application. Hey, Leslie, good to see you this morning, this afternoon, rather. And so, as we move into, I'm going to be sharing three. So, we talk about, so this session is about the 3-step vision effect framework. So, if you are taking notes, you may want to write these down, or if you're not in a capacity to take notes right now, you can go back and watch the replay and then at your own leisure make the notes. So what are the 2 questions that we can ask ourselves before we get into the 3-step vision framework? Shall we be mindful of to whom we share our vision? Yes and no, Leslie. And I'm going to be saying, because we're talking more on the corporate side about the vision today, it's good when managers, when leaders are able to share that vision with the team. So when we talk in terms of corporate, we need the managers, because they would have gotten the vision from their directors or from the board of directors. They would have gotten that vision. And so now it's for them to share that, to bring it out to their team members, to the persons who they lead as managers. So they are able to ensure that not just what is written on the wall is there, because, in companies, we have these vision and mission statements, and they are there on the wall looking nice and pretty. But at the same time, how does that really translate to what we do on a daily basis? And so that's where we are coming from with the vision for this week and for the next 2 weeks in this session, where we're talking about leadership from the perspective of corporate, and how do you as leaders in corporate, how we as leaders in corporate spaces, share that vision so that the persons whom we lead get it and they buy into what we are actually doing. So thank you so much for that. Thank you so much for that, Leslie. But here are the 2 questions that as leaders, we can start asking ourselves. How can I better bridge a grand vision with daily task? How can I better bridge a grand vision with the daily task? So that's the first question that we can ask ourselves. And then the second question that we can ask ourselves is, how can I help my team to see the bigger picture? Because as we talk about Manager Stone having a 9 out of 10 when it comes on to the grand picture, the vision, he scored a 9 out of 10 on when he did the MVP manager assessment results, that yes, he has this grand vision and he knows the vision, but when it comes on to sharing it as to why do we do what we do, why do we do when we do what we do, what are the priorities and why we have these as priorities, that is lost. He actually scored a measly 3 out of 10 when it comes on to communicating that vision on a consistent basis. And so here's the 3-step framework that I've come up with that we can talk about. Number 1, translate the vision, connect it to the daily work, connect it to the mission. Number 2, lead, pause. So as you lead, you pause and you honor what worked. Think about what worked before. And number 3, sustain. So sustain, build recurring rhythms so that, again, because we are seeking to improve our leadership without the burnout. That's what we're doing. We are improving our leadership without the burnout. And so the goal here is when we translate, when we lead and we sustain, the goal is that we're going to shift our leadership balance sheet from an overdraft thinking, as I shared earlier, to an identity of abundance. And when I say abundance, I'm talking about you having enough energy to be able to lead in such a capacity that you are not always depleted. And so this is the 3 steps. These are the 3 steps so that you can leverage your leadership balance sheet in a positive way on a consistent basis. So let's talk about step number 1, translate the why. Every time there's a task to be assigned, connect it to the mission. Remember that the mission and vision statement of the company, the mission and vision of the department is a living, breathing document. It's not just something that is pasted on the wall and that's it. It is getting into that space and asking, okay, how does the work that we do in this department, for example, if you are in information technology, as the chief information technology officer, how do you translate the mission and the vision in your own department to that of the bigger organization, that of the wider organization? So not just what needs to happen. So connected to the mission, not just what needs to happen, but actually why. Why does this matter? And I can go back to that example. Why does it matter as the chief information officer? We are talking about downtime. So when we get to our work, we know that the business depends on us as technology persons to run efficiently and effectively. And so when things go down, when our network system goes down, how long does it take us to get it back up? How do we communicate to the wider community, to the wider organizational community as to what is happening, when we'll get it back up? Because again, it may not impact today, but it may have an impact 3-4 days from now. And so asking that, the why matters. So I'm gonna share a story with you about, a branch manager that I had. And so when I was in banking, she was small in stature, but when she walked into a room, her presence was felt. And I'm saying this to say that my former branch manager, and I can call her name, Michelle, she did this brilliantly. She was able to translate the vision brilliantly every single time. So whenever we had a campaign, whenever a campaign was being run by the branch, she didn't just run campaigns. What she did, she had conversations, she had small huddles, she had one-on-one conversation so that every person on the team would understand why this work mattered. So it wasn't just matter, it didn't just matter to the branch, but to each and every one of us personally. How does this impact me personally as a member of the team? Because when our team understands the why behind what we do, when they understand that we're not executing in the dark, we're not just throwing darts in the dark and hoping that something will stick on the dartboard, but we are actually learning to lead from within. We are actually learning to develop our own leadership skills from within. So we are shifting our belief as well. We're shifting our own belief system from within. And so, not, and again, as you listen from time to time, you'll hear I refer scriptures. And so there's this passage that is well known for persons in the religious circle, in Habakkuk, where it says that write the vision and make it plain so that they that see it will run with it. So when we have this vision and we make it plain, when we operate like a Michelle, my former branch manager, who has that small huddle, who has that one-on-one, and let us know why this work matters, that it's not just to make the branch look good, but it's also at the end of the day to build my growth capacity as an individual, to stretch me, to stretch every one of the team members outside of their comfort zone to grow professionally. So we are growing professionally in these instances. And so when we write that vision and we make it plain, people will want to buy into it. Your team will want to buy into it. And they will see why it matters, not just from an organizational standpoint, but from a professional, their own professional and personal standpoint. And so step number 2 that we're talking about is lead with credibility. So before we come in, again, bringing in Manager Stone, scoring a 9 out of 10 because he had that grand vision. So coming in, we don't want to disrupt everything. So as we're here, we want to pause. So because yes, we have that grand vision, we want to pause and we want to acknowledge, okay, team, what have you built thus far that is working? What have you built thus far that we can continue to use? However, we're not saying that you're gonna not be the leader that you are authentically. So asking the team, because when we pause, we're actually building trust. We're not just disrupting. We're not just coming in with our grand vision and what our grand ideas and disrupting everything that was being built before. But we stay true to our leadership style. Earlier, I told you that my leadership style is visionary and motivational. So whether you find yourself as being an analytical leader or you are high energy or you're calm, the point is we're going to stay true to our own leadership capacity, to our own leadership style as we pause and as we lead with credibility, as we lead with that vision, but without disrupting everything. Because credibility is that currency. When we lead with credibility, it is that currency that makes people want to follow us. It is that currency that makes people want to follow the vision that we have set, because we're building that trust. We're building that trust. John Maxwell has a quote that says, "A leader knows the way, goes the way, and shows the way." And so that's where we build credibility as leaders. We don't just come in and disrupt, but we go. We know where we're going, yes, but not only we know where we're going, because we would have written the vision and would have made it plain. And so now we are bringing people along on that journey with us as leaders, as managers, to ensure that our department functions to the best that it can function. And so, as a leader, we know where we're going, but not only do we know where we're going, we go with our team there. We go with our teams in that direction. We help them to go there as well, and we show them the way. And that's what authentic leadership is. That's what leading with credibility is. People are not just tolerating the vision because we say it, but they are actually going with us along the journey because they see why, they understand the why behind all of it. And so the third step in the framework, in the vision effect framework, is sustain with structure. So we're going to sustain with structure. And this one actually goes back, I would say maybe 3,500 years ago or more. Yes, where we sustain with structure. Again, for those of you who are, in the religious circle, you may be familiar with this one as well, where we would have known the story of where Moses and the children of Israel were in the wilderness, and the people would come to Moses every day. He would be the chief judge. He would be that chief leader. Everybody would come to him every single day from morning till night. And there was a point when his father-in-law, Jethro, came to visit him, and he watched him handling every single dispute himself. Every single question, every single decision, it was Moses. And so his father-in-law pulled him aside and said, listen, this is not good. This is not good. You continue like this, you're going to wear yourself out. This is just too heavy for you alone as a leader. You cannot carry this alone. You cannot carry this leadership burden alone. And so he said to Moses, and I'm paraphrasing here, that find some men who are capable leaders, find people who are capable to lead, to handle the routine stuff. And you step into your role as the leader at the top. Step into that role. Put yourself there. Allow the other persons that you would have, brought on your team, because bring people on your team. That's how you're going to sustain the structure. Bring people on your team. And when you bring the people on your team who are capable, this is what you're going to tell them. They're going to handle this, this, and this. You're going to delegate. This is like a structure that was like, he figured out a long time ago. Delegate and allow the people that you have put in charge to do the work, and then bring to you the things that they can't handle themselves. Bring to you the higher cases. That's what, in essence, he told Moses. And so he didn't just wear himself out, because here's what was going to happen. When he listened to the advice and he implemented that advice, he started to protect his capacity. He started to protect his capacity to lead at a higher level. He wasn't just managing his time. He was actually protecting and managing his energy. And in order for us to sustain with structure, consistency, we need consistency. We need to build rhythms. We need to have in corporate, as first time and mid-level managers leading a team of whether it is 5, 10, 15, or 20, whatever that number is. When we have a staff meeting, or we have meeting, do we have a clear agenda? Do we have clear timelines or time limits on these agendas? Are we having purposeful conversations about current priorities? Or are we allowing the loudest voice all the time to take over the meetings and they run from, for example, the meeting was supposed to be an hour and 3 hours later, this meeting is still happening because the loudest voice in the room keeps taking over instead of having those purposeful conversations and having clear demarcations on your agenda of the timelines as to, okay, we have 5 minutes for this particular segment and no more. And so when we delegate to capable people and trust them with the routines, they will show up fully for themselves and they will also show up fully for us. And so protecting our energy. So we build the rhythm. That is a part of sustaining with structure, building the rhythm where we have those clear timelines, or we have those clear agenda items. In that, when we, incorporate that, we are also protecting our energy. We learn to protect, we start protecting our energy. Because here's the thing, a leader running on empty cannot translate the vision. But the structure that we put in place helps to prevent the burnout. It helps to keep our why alive week after week. And so this was something that Jethro figured out in the desert, like over 3,500. I'm going to put it at over 3,500 years ago. And so the question to us as first time and mid-level leaders, are we going to adopt some of this principle? Are we going to listen and adopt these principles for our own lives, for our own leadership journey, so that again we are not depleted, we are not operating in an overdraft state, we're not operating an overdraft leadership account, but we're operating from an abundance leadership account. And so when we actually bridge this gap, performance follows purpose. And so once again, let's just recap quickly what this leadership balance sheet may look like as it relates to the framework that we just shared. So one, we translate the vision, we translate why the task is necessary. So we connect the work. So when we are operating from, that abundance, when we're making those deposits, we're connecting the daily mission, the daily work to the mission. But when we operate from more of an overdraft thinking, when we're because sometimes we unintentionally make those withdrawals, we assign the task without context because we are saying they should know. The second part of the framework is lead. When we operate from the abundance in our leadership account, we lead with authentic credibility. But unintentionally, we may just rely on our charisma to get us through and then sustain. We have structured rhythms, and that helps to protect our energy as leaders, because remember, our focus, our energy is a part of our leadership currency, and how we spend it will impact our balance sheet as leaders, our leadership account. And so if you have enjoyed this session, let us know in the comments. Let us know in the comments, what was your takeaway? Add to the conversation. Let's add to the conversation what's happening, and we will continue to talk about that. And so I want to remind us here's something that I want us if you have not remembered anything else that I've said all the time, all day that I've been here with you, for the period of time that I've been here with you, if not remembered anything else, this is what I want you to remember: that leadership isn't about the title or the badge, it's about the impact that you have on others. So leadership isn't about the title or the badge, it's about the impact you have on others. And further to that, leadership isn't a sprint, it's a marathon that requires you to stretch out your mind on a daily basis. So you may see people going on 100-meter dash, but you also have people who are on a 400-meter race. Or let's put it even further. Your leadership is like those marathon 15K runs, not even 800, but those 3,000, 5,000, 10,000 K runs. That's what your leadership is like when we talk about it being a marathon and not a sprint. And so, again, if today's session resonated with you, if you recognize yourself, whether in my story or in Manager Stone's story, then I want to invite you into something deeper. I want to invite you to come a little deeper with us. Because I'm now accepting application for the MVP Leadership Accelerator Program. It's a 4-week live intensive designed specifically for first-time and mid-level managers who are ready to stop operating, stop operating in the overdraft mode, stop operating in the task mode, and start leading with purpose, clarity, and impact. Inside the program, we will complete the MVP Manager Assessment. So you too can see your exact data, just like these that we are sharing about Manager Stone, about where you are unintentionally making those withdrawals from your leadership bank account and where you can start intentionally making deposits. And that's where we begin to do the real work to not only build your personal vision, but help you to craft that vision for your team, with your team, and your presence, to help to build your presence as a high impact leader, not with burnout, not with guesswork, but with a clear path forward. Again, spots are limited. We have opened up 8 spots, but right now we have about 4 spots remaining. And so if you are ready to apply, send me a direct message with the word accelerator. Send it now. Send it before you leave off this live. Send it, and I will send you the application link. And after we've sent you the application link, then you get to book a call and we get to onboard you into the program. And so, again, we want you to lead with clarity. We want you to lead with impact, but without the burnout. So we want to thank you so much for joining us today. And I saw that Chanel said this was very insightful. Thank you so much, Chanel, for joining us this afternoon. And so for next week we're at week 3. So remember that this is a 4-part series. Last week we did the Bulletproof Manager. This week we talk about the 3-step framework for the vision void. And so next week we'll be on next week's live, we'll be moving to performance. So we have talked about mindset. Today we have talked about vision. Next week we're going to be talking about performance. We're going to be talking about the 4-step performance edge system for new managers and how to become an impact-driven leader. So we're going to be talking about that for next week. Again, thank you so much for investing in your growth today. This is Finding Freedom Through Confidence. We are here every Thursday at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard. This week, the time changed and my clock didn't change. So for those of you who are in the US and I guess, parts of the US and parts of Canada, Um, Today would have been at 1 o'clock. Next week it's going to be at, because it's 12 p.m. Eastern, so it's going to be for Jamaica persons and for, I guess some other persons somewhere else. This keeps throwing me off with these time zone changes. It's gonna be 11 a.m. Jamaica time, 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So not 1 p.m. But again, because I was used to scheduling for 12 o'clock and being on the same time with you all for a little while, that threw me off. But come next week, ready to participate, ready to share. As always, I thank you so much for joining. And if this helped you in any way, shape, or form, repost it, share it with your network, share it with a manager that you know that needs this information, that will find this information valuable. And again, continue to subscribe to my leadership conversations here, as well as on YouTube, and also the newsletter that we have here on LinkedIn. And again, remember, for 2026, our thought is MVP confidence is currency. Bye for now, everyone. Take care.